You're listening to Rookie Pirate Radio, the official anime and manga podcast for InBetweenDrafts.com. I'm John Negroni.
And I'm Travis Hymas.
And today we're doing a manga recap of One Piece chapter 1130, titled The Accursed Prince. And Travis, I think it's fair to say that we should call Rookie Pirate Radio the Accursed Podcast.
John, are you implying that we've been cursed lately and haven't been able to record as timely as we'd like?
No, just that all of the other podcasts had to team up to take us down.
Oh, that's it, right. Yeah, they had to chain us to a radio tower that was no longer in use because they thought it was ironic.
As usual, we're going to be discussing spoilers for the One Piece manga up until this point. So if you have not yet read chapter 1130, be sure to do so now for free on the Viz website or the Shonen Jump app, linked on the show notes as always. And remember, all new One Piece chapters are initially available to read for free up to 3 weeks after their official release. At this point, it's been almost 2. So you can also, though, read these chapters whenever you want if you're subscribed to Shonen Jump, which we are and do recommend. Yeah, we had some time off again, and it's been a little bit difficult to wrangle. It's been October. October has been a weird time. Launched a new podcast. That went well.
I have no life updates. I got a year older.
Hey, look, I had a birthday this past month. Travis, did you have a birthday? And I missed it?
Literally yesterday as of time of recording.
Happy birthday, Travis. I did not know this. I didn't know our birthdays were so close apart. But I assume that I'm older than you, but I don't want to say that actually for sure.
No, you're the captain of this ship. That's all that matters.
Well, that's unfortunately that matters, I guess. Now, okay, we have a lot of things to talk about with this new chapter. A lot of things I'm anxious to get into. We've had some time to think about it. But Travis, I think that there are some folks maybe who listen to the show and they might be excited. They might be like, finally, Rookie Pirate Radio is on YouTube. And not video, it's an audio-only podcast you can listen to on YouTube. And that's where you can put comments. That's where, we're starting to get some traction on there, which is fun to see. But, I think that there are other folks who are like, yeah, that's good news for a podcast that puts out episodes more frequently. What am I supposed to do when John, Travis, and the rest of the Rookie Pirates don't show up? And we don't have a weekly show. Where do I go? Where do I put all of these One Piece theories, speculations, jokes, and references and links to biting One Piece content? What do I do? Travis, I think you know that I know the answer to that question.
I am not sure that you know the answer to this question because the recurring bit is that you forget every time that we have a Discord for our site, InBetweenDrafts.com, which has a special section just for One Piece spoilers and discussing the content of this podcast.
Well,
and that's linked in the show notes.
Travis, you got me again, because it's not that I forgot that, it's because I lured you into a trap. I made you think that I forgot, so I could get you to say all of that for me, and I could take a sip of my drink.
You knew that they were announcing that Death Note game today, and so you were just ready to pull out the old all according to Keikaku meme.
I did see something, because I upgraded to iOS 18.1, so it has some of the Apple Intelligence stuff, and it tells you, if you have like a group of notifications, it tells you, also I'm an employee of Apple, so, full disclosure, but I don't know much about the Apple Intelligence stuff. When I downloaded it and I saw the group notification, it gives you like an AI summary of what the messages are about. And when I tell you the Discord summary I saw for this Death Note game, Travis, it basically said, oh my goodness, everyone in this Discord is like losing their minds. And I was like, oh wow, that's interesting.
That's a little bit hyperbolic, I would say, but we did discuss it a little bit in that Discord. We also discuss a lot of things like Nintendo randomly dropping a music streaming app today. Things like that. It's a lot of fun.
How random is that? All right, well, Travis, I think that if one thing we need to discuss, it's One Piece chapter 1130. Are you ready to do it?
Do.
No, you're not, because we didn't say the email. I caught you again. RookiePirateRadio@gmail.com. Let's say it one more time. Together, though, at the same time. 1, 2, 3.
Counting down?
One, 2, 3. Rookie Pirate Radio at gmail.com. That was perfectly awkward.
Yeah, exactly.
All right,
nobody's going to remember it from that.
Yeah, I know. Chapter 1130. They're going to forget intentionally now. The Accursed Prince. We start with a cover story continuation. This is a spooky one. Ogre Child Yamato's Golden Harvest Surrogate Pilgrimage Volume 17. Sword got stolen during nap time. So funny stuff. Just, the whole concept that Otama, Shinobu, and Yamato just decided to take a nap, which appears to be like the middle of the day, maybe. And looks like the sword got stolen. This was, I believe, which sword was this again? Was this the one that was the other one that Hiyori,
It's the one that Yamato is supposed to deliver.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So this is finally, because we've been doing this like hinting at like, oh, people have gone missing and all this is happening. And Yamato's like, oh, that's interesting, and then shovels some food in her mouth and then leaves. So now
maybe that's
the
why
plot making her care.
Maybe that's why Oda delayed her joining the Straw Hats, because she's too much like Luffy right now.
Yeah, right.
It's like we can't. Egghead and Elbaf would have just been too much for two Luffys, I guess. All right, and we already had two Luffys with Bonnie, so there you go. We would have had three. Yeah. That's wild to even think about. All right, a big chapter. Lots of big stuff happened in this one. We start the chapter on the Great Eric, and Frankie is telling the Giants that, all right, we're going to stop searching for Luffy. He feels confident, and the other Straw Hats agree, like, all right, they're probably okay, but we're kind of wasting our time at this point. We need to move on. This very much feels like Oda writing in, like, why would they go to Elbaf next if they're still searching? And so this is kind of like a little lampshade of like, here is the logic we have come to. And it's like really just for the readers to not nitpick it to death. And yeah, so like Robin even says, like, we've done all we can. We should just head for Elbaf. We can trust that Luffy's going to make it there. Jinbei brings up that his shark network was actually helping them. I always forget that Jinbei is kind of like Aquaman pretty much. And so a fun little reminder that he can just kind of do that, which is nice. And Brooke also adds that like they're running out of food. So it's literally Oda adding to like, they can't just be here forever. So like, all right, Oda, we're fine, Oda. Don't worry. We're not that subreddit that just criticizes One Piece all the time. I won't even say their names, but anyway. So anyway, the Giants are like, let's do it. And they set course for Elbaf. Then we go to Luffy's group, which still consists of really the Alabaster crew. So basically the East Blue crew plus Chopper. And there's 6 of them now. So Luffy, Nami, Chopper, Sanji, Usopp, and Zoro. They have managed to escape the room like we saw at the end of the last chapter, and they immediately see a giant tree. They see a bunch of huge snowy mountains. They get on this large, humongous rope bridge that connects the castle that they were just in to a totally other location going up into the tree. They hide immediately when they see that there are a bunch of giants, 2 giants, crossing the bridge. They are Gerd and Goldberg. So Gerd is the doctor of the new giant warrior pirates, and Goldberg is the cook. The new giant warrior pirates, of course, being the Straw Hat Grand Fleet pirates under Hajrudin, who we haven't seen in a while. So just kind of bringing that up. He gets mentioned right in this scene, actually. They are talking about why Hajrudin let Road into their crew. So remember, Road or Rodo is the navigator. He's the one who was cosplaying as the sun god and captured Luffy and everybody. And we had our little like quasi filler arc at the beginning of this main arc. But anyway, Goldberg is kind of arguing with Gerd about how like, oh yeah, even though Road sucks, he's a good navigator, but Gerd doesn't like him at all and says that he's the real shame of Elbaf, not Loki, which is kind of interesting to say because it maybe is hinting that not everybody believes Loki is bad, which I want to put a pin on that. Maybe some people are kind of looking at Loki as sort of like a victim of the system or something like that. But anyway,
John, like I don't want to like foreshadow anything, but we haven't met this Loki yet. We have met Road, and I gotta say, Loki's been accused of some things, but being a pervert is not one of them. So like, I get it,
Good point.
But
good point.
I mean, it's not like we're gonna find anything out about that later.
Well, okay. Well, here's what we do find out in this scene. Gerd asks her owl, which is named Piper, if she saw Rhodes' crow, which I think was named Mugen or something, carrying a small ship to the castle. And Goldberg says they're supposed to arrest intruders, but Rhodes keeps smuggling them into the country, to which, if they find them, they'll report to Ja Rule. Not Ja Rule of the Fire Festival, to be 100% clear. But actually, this is Mountain Beard Ja Rule. He was a former co-captain of the Giant Warrior Pirates. So you might remember, I think he first got brought up back during Whole Cake Island, I want to say.
During Big Mom's flashback, right?
Yeah. I think that was the very first time. And I don't know if we've heard about him or, seen anything from him since, if I'm mistaken. But yeah. So anyway, from there, Luffy's group, they do hide, but Luffy's kind of like, he does want to talk to them because he thinks they look friendly. And so there's like a little bit of a sort of like maneuvering of the story of like Luffy's right that they would be friendly because Luffy's literally their boss, but they just don't realize the context. And that said, the Usopp is the first one to declare that, oh yeah, based on the conversation, we officially are in Elbaf. Congratulations, Travis. All of that hemming and hawing and crowing and cawing, we were right. We were in Elbaf. We didn't need to fuss and frown about it and think that like we were somewhere else. Nope. This isn't the weird filler Namek saga thing that happened before the Namek saga in Dragon Ball Z. You remember that one?
Oh, yeah.
Truly a legendary filler arc. Luffy then prepares to talk to them, but Nami is afraid that they're gonna, think that they're intruding and all that stuff. Again, they just don't realize that actually this would be a smart thing to do because, they're the Straw Hat Pirates and this is a Straw Hat Grand Fleet pirate crew. Anyway, the Straw Hats keep walking on the bridge, but they have to be careful because there are huge gaps. It's actually kind of funny because Chopper even mentions, he's like, I have to do this all the time, basically, because he's so little. So he's kind of used to having to like hop in order to go over like normal things. And we also know that there are huge wolves below. This is a very Viking Norse mythology kind of thing. I think even if you've watched like Thor Ragnarok, there's like references to like Fenrir and stuff like that. And so that seems to be what this is clearly referencing. Luffy immediately, though, we see like everyone's kind of having their let's go across the bridge. And Luffy, though, is kind of like he has his like serious face on. He apparently senses something that's giving him goosebumps. We haven't really seen him have a moment like this since Kizaru showed up at Egghead Island. And he was like, uh-oh, So that should kind of tell you that we're dealing with someone super powerful. And so he tells everyone he heard something and he decides he's going to go check it out. And immediately, I think Zoro is kind of like, I'll go, or Sanji's like, I won't go. And Zoro's like, I'll go. And Sanji tells him, no, you're not going anywhere. You're not getting lost in a forest, especially a giant forest. Then we shift scenes actually to back at the sea to the Giant Eric, where the Giant Warrior Pirates, as they are still on their way to Elbaf, they are shocked to learn that the papers have come out and have said that they and the Straw Hat Pirates were the attackers of Egghead. Luffy is being blamed for killing Dr. Vegapunk. And pretty remarkably, Dory and Brogie's bounties have jumped to 1.8 billion berries. Robin claims that this is an effect of inflation, though. And if you actually do the math, I think Tekking kind of laid this out. Apparently, it does kind of mimic or mirror real life inflation, which is kind of funny in terms of like how expensive. Because their bounties were like 100 million or something like that when we met them in Little Garden. So inflation does exist in the One Piece world. Hey, look, Bidenomics. I mean, it's crossing fantasy at this point. How amazing is that?
Yeah, and it's kind of a neat thing to introduce right now, right? Because we are getting dangerously close to like Shanks's bounty and Luffy's bounty and the other Emperor's bounties, like starting to hedge close to Whitebeard's and Rogers. And, especially for people who use this as like a way of power scaling. Not in the like Reddit fighting way, but just in like, how do we define the threat level of where we're at? That's kind of getting weaker as we start to catch up to them. So this idea that if Roger's bounty was still active today, it would be higher just via inflation, just via being alive still.
Yeah.
I think that kind of solves for that little detail.
We were talking about that in the Discord. Somebody brought that up. I think it was John Negroni, but Travis, yeah, because I gotta still I have to finish the recap.
Yeah,
I cannot forget to bring up the thing in the fan letter, which it's a huge One Piece mystery that the fan letter thing from the anime actually solves. But we'll get to it. Okay. First, though, there's also this curious thing that happens where Robin notices an X on Luffy's arm when he's in his free form, as she calls it, his Gear 5th form. And she's kind of like, yeah, I've never seen him have this. And Frankie and the rest, they're like, oh, yeah, I don't know. He's always moving around so much. Why do you care, Robin? Like, what's the big deal? And she's just like, it seems kind of familiar. They notice that it's like the picture is blurred, but the mark isn't. And so this is, pretty obviously like Vivi clearly trying to communicate with the Straw Hat Pirates. This is a like return to Sabari archipelago using the newspaper to like be like, help, this is a call for help.
Saw this, I stopped reading and I just started clapping because everything makes sense now.
Yes.
All of it. Like, why is Vivi with Morgans? Why do all of that? Why the 6 that go to Elbaf? Why specifically the Alabasta gang? Of course. Of course it was something. It was a literal reference. Of course.
Destiny. Yeah.
Yeah. Just well done, Oda. Well done.
And this chapter is coming out at such a great time because I can further explain to my wife why I want that X tattoo on my arm. But anyway, that's a different story. Anyway, so Dory and Brogy are at that point kind of like, boasting Luffy a little bit. It's like, I can't believe you're on the same level as red-haired Shanks. And they're also pretty, proud of the fact that Hajrudin is one of his followers. They mention that he's like one of the whippersnappers from their old crew. And so, yeah, there seems to be some like, even though, of course, they're pirates, they're, on opposite sides of pirate crews and everything, there's still a lot of like love and, camaraderie going on there, which is kind of cool to say. They also reveal something pretty big about Hajrudin. I don't think we knew this before. I didn't know this. That he is the son of Elbaf, or the king of Elbaf? That he's also a prince?
He's the son of the king? Yeah, that was news to me. I don't think we covered that, but it does make more sense now what he was doing in Dressrosa.
Yes, I was double taking because I was like, wait, did we know that? I don't remember that ever getting brought up. So that's a pretty big revelation. And they also reveal that he did want to come and save the Straw Hats, like Travis and I wanted him to as well. However, apparently, because Dory and Brogy they have seniority, they beat him out. So there's a hint, I guess, then that he is on the island. The other pirates are there. But that's how I read this, is like, okay, so we're going to have Hajrudin come into the story. Loki obviously is in the story. So like, here we go. We have like our arc blueprint, basically. We'll see how it proceeds from here. But yeah, speaking of, the Giants then explain that a long time ago, Elbaf had a prince who they called the Accursed Prince. And they said that he had devoted himself to darkness, that they tried to crucify him, and then when he attempted to escape Elbaf, everyone had to work together to subdue him, all the giants. So that just kind of tells you, no wonder Luffy has those goosebumps, right? And Jinbei is kind of thinking like, oh, you couldn't be talking about, and then it cuts him off. So then they say that he even killed his father. So we find out here that Prince Loki actually killed King Harold. And so that is also a pretty big reference, because we haven't met the king or anything like that. We don't know what he looks like. He hasn't. He might have been referenced at some point, maybe, but I don't recall if he was. Either way, we find out that there is a certain devil fruit that passes through the Elbaf royal line, and apparently Loki killed his own father, Hajrudin's father as well, in order to get this devil fruit, and then he ate it, and it's a legendary devil fruit apparently. And so they all say that he's the shame of Elbaf. If he escapes imprisonment, if he escapes from Elbaf, it will be the end of Elbaf. And so sure enough, as many of us have suspected, they are talking about Loki, because then we cut over to Luffy, who that is the person he finds and comes into, and this is like a huge, like, I think it was like a 2-page spread, I want to say. Or no. Yeah, it was a 2-page spread, because then we got another one of Elbaf itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'd have to open up because I moved away from the page. But yeah, my goodness. I mean, first Loki, and then we see Elbaf. It's such a cool one too. But he's blindfolded. He kind of has the helmet that looks like the Marvel Loki and a lot of the original Norse mythology too, obviously. And Luffy and them, they basically introduce each other, and Loki confirms for him that they are on Elbaf. He says that Elbaf is, the land where warfare was born and all this stuff. And Loki says that he is the sun god who will bring about the end of the world. Little weird, right? Because it's like, bro, you devoted yourself to darkness and you're the sun god? Like, pick a motif. I'm like, okay.
Well, I mean, we have rumors, right? We have what most people think, and then we have Loki's claim. So I think we're supposed to look at these kind of funny, right? He's claiming to be a sun god. Everybody else thinks he's obsessed with darkness. That, like you said, this is our conflict being set up. We know he's technically a false sun god because the real one standing in front of him, right? Well, the finger quotes real one.
Yeah, it tells you a lot, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. So I had a big theory about this, and I shared it in the Discord. My speculation is that this devil fruit is supposed to be the Nika fruit. And that I think what it might end up happening is that essentially the reason that nobody has been Joy Boy since Joy Boy is because this fruit was passed down and not consumed by the giants for years and years and years. And they were protecting it, waiting for Joy Boy to come. It's one of those things, like Joy Boy was talking to Emmett, right? Of like, here's what you need to do. And it's like, I think he had the same conversation with the Elbaf giants. In which, by the way, this confirms for me even more that Joy Boy was not a giant, because I don't think he was like part of like the world where warfare began and all that stuff. I don't think that's quite right. But anyway, that's a whole other, that's just me petitioning my Joy Boy Fishman theory. But anyway, so I think this fruit was passed down. And I think at some point after Roger died and Shanks, started his like pirate journey or whatever, the reason that Shanks knew to get it from Who's Who's, that somehow the real version of this fruit was swapped out and got into the hands of the government. And somebody found out from the government that the fruit was somewhere, that they knew it existed. And Shanks ultimately got it from Who's Who, and that's how it got to Luffy. I think I covered everything that I speculated in the Discord channel. That's like the basic idea of the theory. And that whatever fruit he consumed is maybe different. And I don't know what it could be. Some people were trying to say, I saw some people be like, oh, maybe he ate the gum fruit, but no, that doesn't exist apparently. But what do you think, Travis? You think I have enough? I can grab some more aluminum foil for the hats if you're.
No, I mean, we know for sure that the world government was trying to detain this fruit and couldn't, which kind of leads us to the assumption that that's why they changed its name. Does that mean that it was in one place? Technically, no. But we also know that Elbaf is not world government affiliated and that that's been an issue for them. So it is possible that if there was a swap out, and we know CP, the CP group, I forget which one Who's Who was a part of, but that was a CP operation.
I think it was CP9.
CP9. So it is possible that there was a swap or some sort of thing as like an in. So that's me kind of like strong manning, like steel manning this theory, because it is technically feasible that that's what happened. However, just because we're discussing Loki as a character, and it's very clear that we're kind of getting this amalgamation of Loki in his various forms, from Journey into Mystery is kind of like the pop culture version to the more, authentic versions. This idea that when Loki breaks free, Ragnarok kind of begins, that whole thing. It's kind of difficult for me to just be like, okay, so the Nika fruit was just always here, because they would not have consumed it under your theory. However, Loki killing King Harald suggests that it was consumed, and it's a Blackbeard situation.
Which doesn't make sense to me because, that seems risky, considering how did he get the fruit after that, and how did it, pop up, like the way that it manifests. I don't know. It doesn't make a ton of sense.
If I may, the skull on Loki's little belt there looks suspiciously like the ones on Blackbeard.
No, come on now.
I'm just
Travis.
saying, we do eventually have to deal with that. We do eventually have to deal with the explanation of how that worked.
I'm ready to deal with it, but that feels a little cart before. I feel like...
I'm not saying that like he's Blackbeard related. I'm saying that whatever methodology Blackbeard has learned could have originated here.
Originated here?
Mm.
An Elbaf. Well, I'm not going to discount that because it does feel mildly interesting to me. But I gotta say, I mean, as we are talking about the design, I mean, how satisfying is this a design? I'm like, yeah, I am not underwhelmed. I'll put it that way. I think that Oda really outdid himself with just really the whole construction of this character. He's kind of got the Doflamingo tongue thing going on, but I can forgive that.
It's to make him look slimy, right? I can't wait for like in 3 or 4 years for the anime to give us the full experience.
I'm going to assume he's blindfolded because it has to do with his devil fruit, that they had to blindfold him in order to essentially stop him from being able, because I'm assuming these are sea stone cuffs, chains or whatever.
They must be, right?
Yeah. But why else would he be blind? I didn't look into this before in terms of like, oh, is there a reference in Norse mythology that I'm not aware of that this could be in reference to? There might be something out there.
It's not a Loki reference, but there is established history of like Odin chaining someone up, and I think it's Mimir. I want to say it's Mimir, but that could be just me like transposing God of War content. Mm-hmm. But like has his organs eaten out, and then over and over again, Norse mythology goes as hard as Greek mythology. So like chained him to a mountain, and he just has kind of his eyes and other entrails kind of consumed by ravens, and then he regrows them overnight, and it happens again, and that's just kind of like what's supposed to happen. That could be it, but you're probably closer than I am, honestly.
Who knows? It could be a combination of things. Yeah, the only other thing I wanted to talk about in the whole chapter, not to cut everything off, but the whole thing with the X and what happens next and everything. My question to you, I guess, is do you think that means we are due for, like, basically to go to a VV related thing next? And so, or do you think the VV stuff would happen in this arc? Because that's what I'm wondering, is that if we're going to have kind of a Zoe situation, like I know we've speculated, where we're in Elbaf for a while, like maybe a half to 2/3 of the time we were in Egghead or something, but ultimately this is sort of a stopping point to some other huge thing. So similar to Sabari Archipelago as well, in which we lay out our conflict, and then the Straw Hat Pirates link up, and they have to go somewhere else, and that would involve Vivi in some way. What do you think?
I would have bought into that until this chapter. I think
because of the double spread.
I think the double spread. I know that seems like such a silly thing to like attribute it to, because Oda will use double spreads whenever he can. But it's very clear with all of the buildup and the big reveal of him, and this implication that like he's calling himself a sun god. And we do, speaking of things that we kind of eventually have to deal with, we do kind of have to deal with the fact that Luffy doesn't really know what the heck is going on around him. And I know that it's very funny to laugh and go like, oh, he doesn't care. We do have to eventually deal with this stuff. We do have to deal with Bonnie, who's still here. We have to deal with Kuma, who's still here. If we're invoking the sun god's name, we're going to deal with it, right? So, I mean, 10-1, Luffy lets him out because that's just his demeanor. So it kind of seems like what we're getting set up for is Luffy's going to let him out and then kind of has to deal with that.
I don't know if he will, because of how powerful this guy actually is. If it was just a rando and he didn't feel all this hockey or whatever he's feeling, I don't know. I don't know if I agree that he's just going to free him.
No, he just has to deceive him, right?
Oh yeah,
it's not like
in that case,
like
I didn't consider that.
You'll notice nobody went with Luffy. That's on purpose.
So and it is Loki,
so it's like
the god of mischief.
50-50 shot here that like he just cons Luffy into letting him out.
Okay.
And Luffy will be very susceptible to that.
Not because there's the other side of this,
but
right?
Because like there's a guy in chains and he's telling him a sob story or whatever, and he just falls for it.
But how subversive would it be though if he just kind of tells Luffy the truth? But it turns out that like maybe I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but there is a lot of buildup to say that Loki is like horrible and awful. So it would feel very Oda for us to be like, what if he technically isn't? Or if there's something we don't know, or something like a misunderstanding.
That's the other thing, right? Is like it could be that this is more complicated than it looks, which would require us to stick around longer.
And that would, of course, create the whole conflict of like Luffy frees this guy, and then now the entire island wants him dead.
Yeah.
And so that would complicate the whole, showing up at Elbaf and being the sun god and all of that. I mean, it's a pretty classic Oda thing to do. He's not going to take the easy route as, all of us expected.
Yeah. To your question about Vivi, though, I think it's going to come down to how long it takes these two groups of the Straw Hats to come back together. Like, they are technically going to be on the same island, but it is also entirely possible for Oda to keep these folks away from each other long enough for Robin to just not be able to ask the question. Because it seems very likely that she's going to. And as soon as she does, we're going to be confirming everything that this is implying to us. So to me, it definitely feels like Oda is winding a clock, but we don't know for how many cranks he's, actually winding that clock for right now.
Fair. Yeah, that's a pretty fair point. Let's look at some comments here. We have one from Snicker Snack, frequent commenter, who writes, just thought of this, but maybe Elbaf keeps getting intruders because the wood from Treasure Tree Adam is so valuable in the black market. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad, we have the Adam stuff, the Adam tree. Like, I'm glad some of this stuff is finally going to maybe be brought to light, like lingering questions we have about all that stuff. In terms of intruders to Elbaf, I mean, you do need a reason for, like, why would people want to go to Elbaf? What is there to get from this place? It's so dangerous. It's tons of people. It's so well defended. Why, besides, unless you're a kid or the Luffy gang where you're kind of like, I just want to adventure. Yeah, I mean, why was, Lin dropped off here? Because they thought that these were the only people who could handle her, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of world building that we can see here. I mean, this is the one, right? This is probably the one island outside of Laugh Tale, obviously, that Oda has spent the most time kind of like teasing out for us, like to the point where it's almost wild that we're here. So it seems definitely likely that all of this has been thought out. Even if we don't get it in the manga, it does feel like the SBS is just going to be filled with like extra stuff he couldn't fit in.
Yeah, 100%. I have this is a big comment from Tagahanga, but I just want to pinpoint one thing from it that I find pretty interesting. It's just, there's a lot of replying and stuff like that, so I don't want to, But this thing about if the tree is possibly connected to a sky island, and that I think is something that has been speculated a while. Sure, we have the Jack and the Beanstalk thing, I guess, that would relate to, and so I'm glad that the chapter itself actually kind of shows us that like this probably is like so high up that it would kind of go that far into the sky, right?
Yeah, and then we have the reality that the Straw Hats are just to scale completely out of their depth. So everything is just significantly higher. So this already looks like it's reaching into the sky. It's really going to look like that as we zero back in on the Straw Hats.
Mm-hmm. Naruto08 writes, of all the things I could have expected for Elbaf, Ragnarok wasn't it. Yeah, that's another good... I brought up Thor Ragnarok, but that was another thing with that movie, right? It was that Ragnarok was a good thing. This idea that like ending the world would be a good thing in the context of, well, the One Piece world kind of does need to end so that something better can come about. And that's not to say that people who want to end it have the right intentions or that the world they want to recreate is a good world, because, I mean, the username checks out, Naruto. I mean, we could look at that, right? As our reference. So that's a very One Piece thing. It's like, no, the status quo isn't good, let's make it better. Let's change the world, and there is such a thing as righteous revolution, all that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And, again, with the sun god invocation specifically, there's the idea that whoever finds the One Piece will turn the world upside down. And we've kind of implied that to be everything from gets a hold of the ancient weapons to destroying the Red Line, et cetera, et cetera. Vegapunk just predicted the flooding and everything as well. So, again, putting Loki in front of Luffy and kind of putting these two together is it's got us thinking about that. Like, what does that end of the world look like? When we were getting the Vegapunk message, the recurring thing that I kept coming back to was, is it good if the world sinks? And it's not clear by the end of Vegapunk's message, because on the one hand, we want Luffy to take these guys down and everything, but on the other hand, the world government's the one actually using the weapons. So where does this all fit together? It's a lot more nuanced than just destroy world good / bad.
And I think the thing to remember, especially people who are like, wow, when did Oda really come up with this? Remember, Ragnarok is a very Viking thing. And Oda has long had the Viking thing as part of the story. And just remember that like the first stuff he worked on was Vicky the Viking. And so we can easily look at like One Piece as an extension of that original kind of setting, right? Vikings are the original pirates. And so all that to say that Ragnarok, I think, has always been a part of the end game for Oda, has always been something I think he's been drawing upon. So the fact that we're getting to it now and all this sun god stuff, it really just kind of confirms that he's been noodling this at the very least in Skypiea, but probably way before that too.
Literally, in if you get like a printed copy of Romance Dawn, I don't know if the 3-in-1s include this. I would hope that they do. But at least in the original like single volumes, one of the earliest things you get is not an SBS, but it's actually Oda just talking about Vikings, just establishing right out of the gate, like, I like Vikings. He literally says what you said, they were the original pirates, and he talks just a little bit about like Vikings, the way he finds interesting about them. That's something that you get right out of the gate from the man himself.
Yeah, there you go. I'm sure he had a lot of fun playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Somebody had to. Oh, and also, this is from Balasar. Balasar writes, I wonder if that X is Vivi's way to inform the Straw Hats that she is alive and with Morgans. Also, I wonder if the sword is another clue to the humongous creatures we saw at the end of the Skypiea arc. So in terms of the first thing, yeah, I think it's more than Vivi being like, I'm alive and with Morgans. I think that's part of it. But I think it's also Vivi trying to basically summon them and to get their help. How that really plays out, again, we don't really know. As for the sword thing, I don't know. We've seen big things all throughout One Piece. I don't know why we would tie it to that mystery and those creatures. I don't remember those creatures having clear weapons or anything, Travis. And so why couldn't it just be a giant sword? Because we're on the giant island.
We've seen a few giant swords on islands. There's the one on Onigashima that never got paid off either.
That's true.
I could see why people's attention is like drawn to it.
Yeah, there you go. Star DMG wrote, Sun God versus Sun God. Crazy. Is it just me or does Loki look huge, way bigger than the other giants we just saw? Although it could be some wonky perspective. His belt buckle also kind of looks like Oars Jr.'s, I think. See, there you go, Travis. Not just Blackbeard, but Oars. But, that's actually funny. I didn't even realize that myself in terms of perspective, but I don't know. I don't know if it's fair to say that he's bigger. He probably is. I'm assuming he's older than Hajrudin and older than like Goldberg and them. He's probably closer to age to like Dorian Broggie, maybe, you think? Maybe? The king is probably like super old.
Yeah, we know that the chief, for example, the chief was old when we did Big Mom's flashback, and that was like 50 years of time ago.
Right.
He's still
and
kicking
the giants,
around.
Of course, super long lifetimes.
Super long lifetimes. So I could have sworn we got Harujin's age before. I cannot tell you what it is, but whatever it is, he's still very young for a giant. He's still very much considered a whippersnapper.
There you go.
You can even tell in the way he carries himself.
Yeah, he was a little bit... He didn't have all that confidence. He didn't have all that riz. But after Dressrosa, different story.
Well, he was trying to prove himself. He was doing the Usopp thing. I kind of enjoy those two together, and the idea of them reconnecting here is kind of exciting because I think that they have a lot in common in that regard.
Kiri Vizcano writes, Loki is going to be a top-tier character in One Piece. There's a very good chance he is a D member. He's giving Doflamingo and Kaido vibes. Is it just me, or does anybody get the feeling that Loki might be broken in terms of power? A giant with a legendary devil fruit. Remember, the only legendary devil fruit we know so far is Luffy's Nika Nika fruit, and we all see how broken Luffy is in Gear 5th. Two things I'm excited to know about Loki. What is his legendary devil fruit? How strong is he? In terms of this, is that true, Mr. Travis? Because I know we've had mythical Zoan devil fruits. Have we ever actually had like a legendary devil fruit? Like, has that terminology been used before? I don't recall.
I think it's like, this is one of those things where if we were to go back into like older translations of One Piece, it might have come up, but not necessarily as an official term. I guess that's the question, right? Are we talking about a mythical or not? It could be legendary because it's tied to the royal family of Elbaf. It could be a very potent Logia fruit, for example. I couldn't even remotely begin to tell you what that might be, but it could be. It's really hard to say. If it is mythical, take your pick of potential items here, right? He could be your Mungadur. He could be, there's the wolves you mentioned, Fenrir before. I mean, it would be harder to not pick one if it's a mythical zone, because, or maybe they just don't use mythical in this regard because it's Elbaf and so it's separated from the rest of the world. Maybe they just don't use the same terms.
Yeah, I mean, it could just be a moniker, the same kind of thing where you would say, well, like Law's Devil Fruit is legendary, but not necessarily that it's a specific category that has like its own thing to it. That said, I like the idea of there being like specifically legendary devil fruits, and they are different. They're a different thing. And they would include, the Hito Hito no Mi. They would include something else that would turn somebody into a god. That's what would make, this arc all the more interesting to me, Travis Imus, because then we would have like this person is saying, sun god versus, or the last commenter was saying sun god versus sun god. I mean, there is something kind of immediately interesting about that to me, of like, that's how we get more of the god lore, is it does come down to these devil fruits in some way. I don't know. Who doesn't wish that they were a god, as Vegapunk might say if he was here?
Yeah.
Well, I guess one Vegapunk is there.
Yeah, one of the Vegapunks.
Almost there.
We'll get there. Yeah, right. No, that something has to put them against each other, right? Like, it seems very unlikely that Luffy will be on Loki's side, at least for the entirety of this arc. Like I said, he could get, faked out here, but I don't know. It seems like he's supposed to be the antagonist. You know what I mean?
I also really want him to be a D member. I think that would be really great to see. Get his full name, Loki D, Rookie Pirate Radio or something like that. Just spitballing if you're listening, Oda. But also, yeah, I think this other commenter, Endrian, brings this up too. It's like, even the way that Loki is like grinning, it feels very D-Clan, doesn't it?
It does. It really does.
Endrian also wrote, I also expect he's not blind, judging from that final panel where his face is shadowed except where his eyes would be under the blindfold. Perhaps he has eye powers and the other giants blindfolded him to prevent him from using them. Yeah, that was my thought. The thing that I'm wondering about, though, is like, well, if he's being held by sea stone cuffs, his powers are already nullified, but I just wonder if there's something else to it, and that there's something very unique and special about him in general, or the devil fruit.
Stupid question, because I'm thinking about it.
Are you going to bring up Zoro's eye?
No.
Okay, thank goodness.
How do you think the giants got sea stone if those are sea stone chains?
I'm sure they have some. They're not that far from Wano.
But the military is the one that, promoted its use.
That's true, but we've had giants working with the world government, like in Enies Lobby.
But do you think they brought that back with them? They were tricked.
All it takes is like a little bit of
Now I'm thinking that maybe
they have ancient chains that go from like way, way back, like during the Void Century.
That seems more likely, honestly. But the blindfold would explain it if that's not Sea Stone, and his powers aren't the general like combat effective kind. Maybe it's just literally Code Geass, and he just like can issue commands with his eyes. Mm-hmm. It's like hypnotism.
Yeah, if
like
Eraser Head, where it's like if he sees you, he can, something happens. Yeah.
That might be our hint, because now that I was like, oh yeah, it's Sea Stone, of course it has to be. But now that I'm thinking about it, no.
If he could alter reality, kind of like the Infinity Stone. There's all kinds of stuff. You know what? Yeah, I like that. I think that would be more interesting than just like, oh, it's Sea Stone. Oh no, what is he gonna do? Like, I like that, Travis. And then how would Luffy free him? He can't get those chains off him.
He could just turn
all Luffy would have to do
rubber.
Is lift the blindfold, huh?
Maybe that's it. Maybe that's all that it is he lifts the blindfold and like turns Luffy into a sleeper agent or something.
They team up. He's like, let's go find the One Piece, Luffy. Loki.
Do a Whiskey Peak reference, and he has to like fight Zoro because he doesn't understand what's going on.
Homerman76 wrote, I imagine that X is Vivi trying to convey to the Straw Hats that she is alive and with the newspaper balloon. As far as I can remember, Luffy doesn't manifest that mark. On the other hand, Vivi has easy access to modifying the photos before they go to print, and the only people that would know its significance are the OG Straw Hats. Robin would have only seen it but never known its significance. Yeah, there are a lot of comments along these lines, and yeah, we can only confirm that we feel the same way. Agnisha writes...
It seems so obvious, right? Like, they even take the time to be like, oh, the X is clear, but the photo's blurry. Like, this is not one of those things to speculate on. This is genuinely Oda like, yes, we're dealing with that. Okay.
Yeah.
I have to seed it here. We have to deal with it later. Okay.
And even then, I saw some people arguing that's like, no, that's not what this is. He has the X because blah. And I was like, no.
So I did want to talk with you about this because it's kind of one of those looks into the Straw Hats that we don't necessarily think about too often. I think we've discussed it before, but in one of my personal circles talking about the chapter, the question kind of came up like, did literally nobody tell anybody else on the crew about Alabasta, like what they did, how that went, what that was like? And I mean, clearly the answer is, at least in this context, no.
No. Yeah. And I mean, that sounds like the Straw Hats. They tend to just kind of, they're so in the moment that we don't usually see them just like, when they do kind of like speculate on things, it's like very quick, you know, when they kind of be like, oh, this happened. I mean, there have been other times like Jinbei kind of tells them a lot of stuff that happens in the past, but that's before he was a member, Travis.
Well, and like some people know certain backstories, like, you know, the East Blue crew knows Nami's backstory, for example, because they were all there and had it explained to them, right? Mm-hmm. But, you know, does Nami sit down with like Robin one night over tea and regale her with that?
Yeah, do they have to do like, you know, they have to do like entry interviews of like, all right, here's what you missed on Glee, like that kind of thing.
And is it bad that they don't? If the answer is no, which I'm leaning towards based on this.
Yeah, because the idea, I think, is that they don't need to, that they still accept each other. And like, yeah, I mean, when I make a friend, I don't get their entire backstory unless I was there.
I mean, it's not at first basic policy to basically not give a crap, right?
You have to remember, they haven't been with each other and sailing together that long, you know?
Yeah, technically. Like, it feels much longer than it has been.
It hasn't been 2 full years of them sailing together. It's been like 4 years of the story, I want to say. Almost. Maybe like 3.5, something like that. Depends on how you calculate the time between Return to Sabaody and the current day. But anyway. So Ignitia writes, to add and agree with something somebody else said, when you think about it, freedom is only a single line hop away from being anarchy and chaos, just as order is that close to being captivity and fear. I like that a lot because it's like, yeah, it reminds me of Zahir from Legend of Korra, and it's sort of being like the flip side of the Luffy philosophy, I guess, of like, you know, Luffy at his most free, and his rival would be kind of the inverse of that, or not the inverse, but like the extension of that to a more extreme, which is like so free that you do not, you know, they would inflict harm on somebody else, because there's such thing as like negative freedom and positive freedom. So like, if you, like you being free, if that takes away from somebody else's freedom, is that really freedom and all that? Oh, Travis is falling asleep from all my philosophical babbling.
No, this is exactly what we should be doing at this point, right? Like, this is the themes that the story has been slowly working towards this whole time coming to sit in front of us. Like, this is the time to start cracking open this can of worms and really getting into it. Because when I say, like, we need to deal with the Sun God stuff and, like, in regards to Luffy, it's not really that I feel like Luffy needs to be told, like, oh, you're a special somebody and you're like the Joy Boy and Nick and all that. He's not really going to care, and mostly I want someone to try to explain that to him just so I can get a clip of him, like, picking his nose during it and whatnot. But the reality of it is we just need to kind of align what people have sort of hinted at regarding, like, Joy Boy and Nick and everything, and get that more aligned with how Luffy is personally, so that we can take his personal philosophy all the way to the end of the story.
I did see a few more comments talking about the sword. One person, Cypher J, who we referenced before, thinks it's the Twilight Sword from Norse mythology. So the one that actually like ignites Ragnarok, or ignites the world and brings Ragnarok and all that stuff. So that's interesting. You know, it could be a special sword. I like the idea of it being a special sword, especially, and they even say is, you know, if you can ignite or if the Twilight Sword can be ignited by the Mother Flame and be used to start the new dawn, perhaps by evaporating the rising waters that Emu created.
Interesting.
That's a fun thought to go down.
I do think, regardless of like that sword specifically, I do think that we are very much going to get the details we need here.
Yeah,
like the some of the we're not getting the whole Void Century flashback or anything, but like, we're going to get those extra tidbits that we need.
SSJ Magus said, definitely wasn't expecting Luffy to meet Loki so soon. Yeah, that's actually something I forgot to mention, but I'm really glad that we're just getting right to Loki. And I know you had your whole like Loki is Luffy thing, and I'm sorry, Travis, you were wrong, but it's okay. I'm right behind you. I'll be wrong probably next week. But yeah, the fact that we are getting to Loki, that again kind of confirms for me that like things are accelerating. We're not goofing off. We're not having a little side thing with Road, whatever the heck that was.
It's our reward.
We're getting down to business
for dealing with it. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
It's again like I basically like literally applauded this chapter because it's laying out like Oda was doing all these little kind of things and weaving them back together. It just took us a while to get there because it's a weekly manga. But now it all makes sense. Why are the Straw Hats separated? So that they could get to Loki. It has to be these ones separated because we need to do the XTs. We need to be hinting that Harujin's on the island, but not necessarily give it away because we want to reveal to the other group that he's Loki's brother. This whole thing, they were kind of disparate pieces, and we were kind of like, is this filler stuff? Like, what are we doing? And no, it's so that we can see the story get to that point of Luffy meeting Loki significantly quicker than we would expect. So it was a curious detour, but it was a detour that got us a lot faster to our destination, ironically.
Phoenix 8 wrote, wait, so that's Loki? He's blindfolded? Suddenly it makes sense why he fell for Lola.
Yo! Oh my god! Yo! First off, mean. Second, oh dang! Oh my goodness gracious!
Minus her character design, she was golden. This also explains why he wasn't fooled by Big Mom into thinking Chiffon was Lola. Wow, I'm just picturing him with a flower.
Oh, my mind is blown.
Good job, Phoenix 8. Good job.
Oh my goodness. They should host this podcast. Jeez.
I feel like they're the ones hosting, not me.
Yeah.
Dune said and wrote, I was distracted by Robin wearing glasses and didn't realize the true significance of the X until I was reading the comments. Yeah. Robin just wore glasses, everybody. She just put some glasses on, and like we didn't even mention it. That's how
I try to be mature for the podcast, but I get it. I understand.
My goodness. Yeah, Blue Kuribo writes, it looks like the Straw Hats could spend months in Elbaf and not see all of it. That's how I feel. It's just so big that it's like, yeah, I mean, what are we going to do here? That's like, I guess some kind of Game of Thrones thing where it's just going to be lots of like political squabbling and these family things and all this drama, and it just feels like, yeah, we're in a big space. It's gonna feel like, I know the characters already were saying it's so vast, like they can't even wrap their heads around it.
Like I said, it could take a while for the Straw Hats to reunite, even though they're on the same island.
Chiefy00 says, but chapters like these were another step closer to figuring out who will impersonate Luffy to destroy Fishman Island. Whoa. That's a theory right there, isn't it? I don't think I like that theory, but I mean, I know you like the whole Loki impersonating Luffy thing.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing. The main issue that I have with things like that, I like the idea, but the main issue that I have with it is how much backtracking do we really intend to do? Like genuinely, like, are we actually going to send the Straw Hats like back up and down the Grand Line? We kind of discussed like teleportation and like speed because other emperors kind of seem to have that. We didn't get that on Egghead, so I don't think it's coming into play. And okay, somebody goes and destroys Fishman Island, but like, what are the Straw Hats supposed to do about that right now? That's kind of my question, and it seems more likely that all of that, like the destruction of Fishman Island and everything, that's still supposed to be like our seeding for like turning the world upside down, yada yada yada, more than it is like specifically just the destruction of Fishman Island.
Yeah, because I mean, it's on the way to Mary Joa, or it's like right under it, so we know that it has to be addressed at some point.
Yeah, it just feels more likely because that's the first instance of Joy Boy. That's the first hint of like that larger idea anyway. So it's like making it like a checklist item to check off as like an individual plot point. Like, what are we going to go back to Wano too so we can go get Pluton? Or are we just going to let Blackbeard take it? Like, one of those things seems much more likely, and it doesn't require backtracking in the story.
There you go. Hero2 Anime writes, I was off by one chapter, but I knew the island introduction would happen in a big way, but to think that hunky giant Hajrudin was the son of the king, and Vivi pulling off a 3D2Y, yet the people that would recognize it won't see it until later. And there's Loki, who was once betrothed to Rolling Lola from Big Mom's crew, but she said no. Now that we got the island introduction out of the way, we got X amount of chapters before we get the Robin-Saul reunion. Yeah, I guess, Travis, that's going to be quite a bit delayed because, there's no Jaguar Saul in sight, and Robin's not close to not that close to the island at all, I guess, at this point. So there you go.
We'll get there. There. I don't think that they're like that far away from Elbaf. I don't think they went that far off the beaten path because it does seem like they're just assuming that the Sunny went there. So I think that they're still closer to Elbaf than they are anywhere else.
Black Knight Halberd 42 writes, Lola's ex-fiance, everybody. Soon as we break out of the diorama, Luffy instantly homes in on true false sun god. Super excited for Loki, but it feels weird to debut him so early in the arc if he's going to be its final boss. Love that Oda brought back the Humpty Dumpty silhouette just to haymaker us with the actual God of War looking design on the next page. There's more, but I'll just say, that's not, for Loki to be introduced early, Kaido, defeated Luffy in like the first part of Wano, so I don't think that's very weird. Also writes, interesting that his eyes are bandaged since in the mythology he was chained under the earth with a snake dripping venom into his eyes, and his thrashing in pain caused earthquakes. Like this Loki apparently shaking the tree just by shouting. The so-called sun god being blind is amusingly ironic, especially since Luffy can go gear 5th in front of him, and Loki might not even know. Also, we're lucky he's bound with actual chains, because in the myth, he was bound by his son's entrails. Oh my god. That would have been pretty hardcore for Jump.
I told you, it goes hard.
I like that though. I'm starting to, just going through these comments and talking with you about it, I'm feeling more and more happy or interested or satisfied with the idea that he's just blind, and that's kind of his character. I know we already have Fujitora and everything, but there's something to this that I think is pretty interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, that's it for the comments. Look, quite a lot. There were a few others, but they were kind of just like the same things. But there you go, Travis Hymas. We are in Elbaf. How do you feel? You feel like we really got this story cooking? I know we won't get another chapter for a while, but
Yeah, we'll have it soon enough. We were talking about this before we started recording. We're not
11 days.
We're not going to get that much more One Piece this year, right? Yeah. It does feel like this is going to be a longer one. I feel like we're going to be here a while.
We'll see. I'm not opposed to that, but I am a little bit, I'm looking at my watch, Oda. I'm a little bit like, all right, well, not sure how you're going to squeeze this in, but I'm with you. I'll see this through to the end.
He was very specific. It's the final saga. That could mean anything.
It could mean a decade plus. So,
it doesn't.
And we're 4 years in or so, wherever it is. Not 4 years, but.
We could, in his Jump Festa message, get him going, I might have jumped the gun on calling it the final saga. It's entirely possible.
I meant the penultimate saga.
Exactly.
Translation issue.
This man is just impossible at predicting the future when it comes to how long it's going to take. But I do think that he does keep to his structure of chapters, but I don't think this is a 50 chapter arc. I don't think this is, we're probably looking at 100, if not more.
I think we completely 100% agree that Iñaki Godoy's grandchildren will be able to see this through to the end.
Netflix is going to cancel it way before that.
I was going to bring up the fan letter, but maybe the One Piece fan letter we can do on a separate thing, but I do have something pretty big for that. I
think Ali would prefer if we included her.
You mean Nei-sama? Sure, all right.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it. We'll scratch it. We'll put it onto, not scratch it, we'll put it onto the schedule, the roster, whatever it is. And that'll do it for Rookie Pirate Radio. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll be back when Oda's back. Or actually before then. But anyway, bye y'all.